The legendary A-10 would be proven as one of the most capable, damage-resistant aircraft of all time, in the crucible of fire of her lifetime, the Gulf War. The A-10 shot down 2 Iraqi helicopters using their, you guessed it, GAW-8 Avengers. One pilot described the hits looking like a helicopter had been hit by a bomb. This is the story of the Hogs in Desert Storm. We're going to be covering the stories of classic Gulf War aircraft from F-15Cs to F-117s, and you don't want to miss out on these as you'll have a gap in your knowledge about the Gulf War, so please subscribe to not miss out. The A-10 had some serious stats in the Gulf, roughly 900 tanks with 2,000 other armoured vehicles, 1,200 artillery pieces were destroyed, on top of that 2 helicopter kills. The Air Force's most reliable, simplistic and survivable aircraft finally had a chance to prove itself for the first time in combat since it entered service in 1977. 132 A-10s were deployed to the Gulf from several squadrons. Here's a list of them all. Now, I don't want you to get caught up on all the Desert Shield stuff, let's get straight into Desert Storm. The A-10s and OA-10, which were basically just forward air controllers, but for the Air Force would be seeing most of their time in the opening weeks of Operation Desert Storm, preparing the Kuwaiti battlefield for the coalition ground invasion. Once February rolled around, things really picked up for the A-10 crews. In this video we'll look at a few missions, starting off with a pair of A-10s who got 23 tank kills in one day. The date was February 25th, day 2 of the ground war. Black clouds from the lit Kuwaiti oil fields created a blanket of thick black smoke over a large portion of the Kuwaiti desert. But this didn't faze a column of Iraqi Republican Guard tanks, nor did it faze Captain Eric Solomonson and Lieutenant John Marks of the 76th TFS as they were scrambled to engage the Iraqis. It was dawn and the sun was just coming up and they found tanks, locking Mavericks onto the hot tank engines blowing against the cold sand. They scored 6 kills with Mavericks and 2 more with the GAW-8s. They used a grease pencil in the cockpit to mark which tanks had been hit, and K for confirmed kills. As the early A-10A didn't have a HUD that calculated the ballistics of your shots, you needed good aim, using the Kentucky windage for eyeball targeting. Once they had expended all of their ammunition, they rearmed at a forward operating base. Once loaded up again, they were scrambled to a different location, the suburbs of Kuwait City, to aid the Marines. An F-18D put down a WP rocket to mark the Iraqi tanks heading for the Marines. The pair of A-10s scored 8 tank kills, 6 of which using Mavericks and the rest were using the GAW-8. They had 16 kills at breakfast time. Once expending all their ammunition again, they returned back to King Khalid Airport, where they were asked if they wanted to go out again. Who wouldn't turn this down, even though they had already spent 8 hours in the cockpit? They went to Kuwait City, supporting the Marines taking heavy fire, and set 7 more tanks on fire once again, expending their ordnance in 3 missions in a row. Now let's go to an overshadowed mission type, the Search and Rescue missions, or SAR. The most notable of these missions was Slate 46. You can watch my Tomcat videos in the Gulf War to see the full story, but basically an F-14 was downed and there was a SAR mission to rescue the pilot whose call sign was Boots. Along with an MH-53, the A-10 piloted by Captain Johnson would spend 6 hours searching for the F-14 pilot, leading his flight through 3 aerial refuelings, 1 attack on a Scud site and 3 hours of searching. Just before an Iraqi search party was about to capture Boots, he was saved by Johnson's A-10 flight. They destroyed the Iraqis, notified the MH-53s of his position, and Boots was rescued. Captain Johnson was awarded one of 2 Air Force Crosses awarded in the Gulf War. Now, I think it's time to admire the survivability of the A-10. This is a damaged A-10 landing back at King Fahd Air Base, flown by Colonel Bobby Efferson. He'd been hit by a AAA and landed his bird with no flaps or air brakes, and everything was all going smoothly until the left tyre blew. There were 378 individual bullet holes in this A-10. Several other aircraft were damaged and made it back home, but this flight of A-10s did not. Lieutenant Colonel Sweet's 30th mission would go very wrong. On February 15th, 1991, he'll be flying as the wingman of the lead, Captain Stefan Phyllis, who was sent to hunt tanks 80 miles north of Kuwait, which was further into Iraq than anyone had been in an A-10. Once they reached the area, they had come under heavy anti-aircraft fire, and the standing orders were to leave to avoid getting shot down, and they actually followed this advice and navigated their way back to safety. Though on their egress they did spot a row of Iraqi Republican Guard tanks, all neatly lined up. Who wouldn't resist? They went in for an attack, and the Iraqis launched man-pads and they missed. The A-10s clocked where the missile had come from and tried to strafe the area. However, before they could do so, Sweet felt a slight bump. He looked back and saw his aircraft was on fire. He tried to fly back south to the border, but the plane started to spin and fall back down to earth. Sweet ejected and was met by Iraqi soldiers, whilst Captain Phyllis tried to draw attention away from Sweet by intentionally drawing enemy fire. But he was killed in action. Sweet survived the war to tell the story. Now it is time for the two helicopter shootdowns. The first came on February 6th, where Captain Roberto Swain, callsign Swaino, of the 706th TFS. His flight had just attacked two Iraqi tanks with Maverick missiles in central Kuwait, where he saw strange movement from some distance away. The pair decided to go in and take a closer look, and lo and behold, there were a pair of Iraqi helicopters. The flight overflew them from 5,000 to 6,000 feet above, but they must have been seen as the two helicopters dispersed. One heli flew north, heading for a known Iraqi police station, and his friend continued southwest. They went for the guy travelling southwest, and Swaino gave his wingman the first shot, but he misjudged his shot and missed. Then it was Swaino's turn, starting at a 75-degree dive and tried to lock the heli, uncaging his aimline, but it gave no tone. He switched to guns and carried out multiple passes on the heli, now identified as a Bo 105. Finally, he caught the heli straight in his stream of 30mm bullets. The second shootdown came on February 15th when Captain Todd Shenhy, callsign Shenhy of the 511th TFS, shot down a Mi-8 with his Gal-8. Shenhy was on his 27th mission near the defended city of Karbala when he got a visual on the hip. Things happened very fast. The unwinding altimeter was approaching 8,000 feet, and he settled the gun cross in front of the target. He fired and pulled up, jinking to avoid the big guns, whose 23, 37 and 57mm shells had hit him 2 days prior. Through the dust and smoke, the hip was still alive, albeit with a few holes in it, trailing with some thin white smoke. Shenhy went for a second shot.
Pull up.
The Mi-8 had been downed. It was confirmed as there was no limping hip, just a fire with a thick black smoke bellowing from the impact area. The A-10s had a mission capable rate of 95.7%, flying 8,100 sorties and firing 90% of the AGM-65s fired in the war. They also helped prevent a massive Iraqi push into Khafji, where J-Stars located 60 plus vehicles moving at night towards Saudi Arabia. 2 A-10s were scrambled and along with an AC-130 destroyed 58 of the 71 vehicles. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.